this is just a beautiful conversation. And last week we had many voices that made it very dynamic when people, the purpose of coming together is for everyone to express their wisdom view. So please, Bill, excuse me for interrupting that, but I wanted to capture that. This discussion of flow, presence and flow.
Sure, and I'm not sure if I can repeat if you'd like, or I just let it be.
Yes.
So Bob was playing with, how the notion of the self is reflected in each of us being this sort of distinctive facet of the whole. And I was just, so that's a kind of tricky territory, and sort of, because it's easy to slip into the ego self, the sort of separate, self-created, which seems to be the sickness at the bottom of the sickness that Harada Roshi is even describing right here, the sort of self-manufactured kind of, like videos, video game. And what I was suggesting is that there's something in that poetic image of the bee and the flower coming together. Now they are not the same. They are facets of a sort of a shimmering, pulsing, connected whole. So
yes, that is a poem by Ryokan-san, by the way, which I don't have in front of me, so I hesitate to say it because I don't have it exactly. So, but it is indeed that in which the flower is the flower, the bee is the bee, and they don't interrupt one another's spiritual activity, and yet they share and they are codependent in that sense, that the flower is necessary to the bee, and the bee is necessary to the flower because the bee pollinates the flower. And so they just are in this cooperative whole, in the beauty of that whole. And it is also a paradox that we have to hold, that there is the totality and then there is the particular. And as we mature in practice, we are able to hold that paradox more deeply and more spontaneously. So it is a paradox, Bob, as you say, but that we hold that then.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
At the same time that the small self is not at that time manifesting the Dharma in a sense. The small self is still not outside of the Dharma exactly, because that potential is constantly there. And it is by that realization of that small self that we are able to realize the big self.
Mm.
So I have some experience with this. Many years ago, I read a book that was some introduction to Zen. And the author instructed the readers to go off and sit and think about emptiness. And inevitably, what's going to happen is you adopt some sort of pet concept of your own on what emptiness is, and then you carry that around with you. And I think in a sense, the question answers itself, because if it's something that you can keep on retreating to and go back to over and over again, well, then it's not emptiness.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Yeah, but there's also that hard work that is done in koan practice with koan move, for instance, in which one presses up against the wall of that delusion, and in pushing so hard against the wall, ultimately the wall falls. It just ultimately falls apart. And that is why later in the, a little bit a great shout of, oh, I see. I have made this up this whole time. Oh my goodness. We all do that, I think, on other levels, even if we are not talking about mood. We do that with other aspects of things that we are working on in ourselves, without maybe we are holding some bad feeling about something, or some bad taste, or some emotion that is not helpful to us. And maybe if we sit with it long enough, we press into it, we finally see the roots of it, and we see what might have caused us to hold that view, and in an instant we can let it go. So that's also what is being talked about in that poem that we will come to in a few minutes on the next page, on page 135, but we're not quite there yet. So
I wanted to talk about the lines where it says that it's not, quote, I won't get caught up in things. I won't let things bother me.
Yeah.
Because that's, I think, a really common misconception or conception that we fall into. And a lot of people just have that idea that that's what Zen is, that's what emptiness is. And so for me, like a little bit later, he talks about that's nihilism. And so for me, it was like that we shouldn't deny any part of our experience. So that's just denial. It's just denial of something that we're not being honest about our experience, our complete, total experience. And that was kind of revelatory for me, because I do keep falling into that. Oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or I shouldn't do this, or if I was really practicing, I wouldn't be this angry, and so on. And so it was really, I keep needing to hear that or see that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we work so hard on these, coming to equanimity, practicing equanimity, and so forth and so on. If you're angry, you're angry. And equanimity may be there, but it's not there at that moment. And it may be inappropriate anger. So, the idea of, oh, I shouldn't be this way, all it does is bury the problem in us. Mm-hmm. And is not healthy ultimately. So and sometimes we do that with one another, or we think that about one another, or certainly if you are a Zen practicer and you go into the community and people know you are a Zen practicer and you are in the work field, and for a minute you get irritated, man, they'll be on you fast. Mm-hmm. They will be on, they'll say, aren't you a Zen practicer? Where is your Zen moment?
Precisely. And
where's
it is
my Zen moment? I will cut you in two. That is my Zen moment.
And obviously there's great value in recognizing that we are getting caught.
Yes.
Recognizing that we are perceiving things with that small self. It's that moment of realization, I think, that is so necessary, sort of the yin and the yang, perhaps, in terms of constant awareness of where we want to be and where we don't want to be. It's okay then to allow ourselves to be bothered if we allow ourselves to be bothered, recognize those moments.
Right. So then there's appropriate botheredness.
Just don't hang on to it.
I mean, the problem is that we create suffering around that, or we create bad relationships when we don't use it skillfully. Mm-hmm. So it isn't that one should not be angry or should not do or feel a certain way. Well, what we do with it is where the issue comes. Do we, scream at our wife or our husband or our kids or somebody close by and therefore create more problems along the way. How do we handle that is the key issue. Not that it shouldn't happen.
Mhm.
And on the same, and also not cut off our feelings. That's what I was thinking when I read whatever happens. One moment.
Sure.
I won't get caught up in things. I won't let things bother me. And I was thinking that when we go in this place that nothing is bothering us, we somehow cut off our emotions, our feelings.
Right.
So we don't need to go into that, and we go in that place where we don't feel anything anymore. And then it's easy,
Right.
But so we kind of go off somewhere, sitting in a cloud, and life is not touching us anymore. And we are kind of getting cold and in this.
So that is spiritual bypass. When we bypass our capacity to see the situation, to deal with it appropriately, and we stuff it somewhere, and we don't react, and we pretend to be a holy moly of something.
Yeah.
Spiritual bypass, because we are bypassing our need to work that out in ourselves, to admit what our tendencies are, and to be able to deal with them in a healthy way. And that personal psychological growth is necessary to do the whole of us. Wilbur says we need to wake up, grow up, and clean up. Maybe grow up, wake up, and clean up, in that order. To grow up and be mature in how we address the world and our relations, and then wake up to truly come to awakening in this Harada Roshi sense. And then we have to clean up. We have to clean up whatever we failed to address, tendencies we failed to address in ourselves. And that all of those three are lifelong. We don't do it just in a sudden weekend at a session somewhere. We do it and we come back and we go and we come back and we go and we come back, lifelong. And I think that for those of us who are older know that we are doing our homework no matter how old we are. So it's lifelong practice.
I scratched down spiritual bypass in that paragraph too. And for me, one of the red flags of spiritual bypasses are some of these trite lines that can get pulled out. I won't get, let's see, whatever happens is the way itself. It bears a striking resemblance to me to, well, everything happens for a reason, or I guess that's just the way it is, or some of these more trite phrases that we use that just allows us to skip over a more examined consideration of what really is going on.
Yes, quite right. The Japanese have an expression that I have used many times and I have found it very comforting. It's in Japanese, it's shikata ga nai. And it means, oh, well, it can't be helped. And it's been very comforting at times because you realize there's nothing you could do about a particular situation. Oh, well, it can't be helped. Shikata ga nai. And it only works if you say it in Japanese somehow. If you say it in English, it can't be helped. It's not as personally effective somehow. But you're right, Karen, that there's that tendency to say, oh, well, this is the way it is. So I guess we'll just have to put up with people throwing garbage out on the street. Oh, well. And that's not correct either. So you are right. These are very trite and they can become very, they allow us to just not take action or to not share our wisdom in a given moment is really what I think it is.
Well, I think it lets you off the hook. There are
Sure.
ways that just totally let you off the hook.
Yeah.
Or so you think.
You know, I mean, the words white privilege are coming to mind here for me. That I mean, we live in this culture that has really commodified the Zen thing, the meditative piece. I mean, there are corporations that like train their, you know, try to make their employees happier. You know, it's mindfulness. It's this whole, and part of it is to dull and numb our senses from the obscenity of racist, white supremacist capitalism that is just causing so much suffering. So the thing that's really coming out to me in this is that it's a sickness of turning away from suffering, and therefore turning away from compassion, turning away from who we actually are, and sort of seeking this little spot, this little corner of the room where we can have a chocolate chip cookie and then go about our day without feeling kind of on the hook for suffering.
Yeah. Good comparisons, good similes, good. That is the case. Yeah. So to me, that was a really important paragraph tonight, that you know, where our practice comes down is where it is. It is, you know, what we do shows us what and who we are. And so this is the case of, you know, where we mature around those kinds of things is, to me, really, really where our practice is, so that we do not bypass the nuances and the subtleties of spiritual growth. Because spiritual growth, at least in my experience, is deeply subtle work. It is not this big hullabaloo. It is how do I contend with those subtle notions within me that I foster and want to hold on and keep? Or am I willing to look at them and recognize that they are delusion, that they don't assist in any way in truly allowing the Dharma to come forth? So it's a very important paragraph. And we have to see where we ourselves, for each one of us, our personal work is to see where we each are in the resonance of those words of Harada Roshi's teaching. So, and he keeps saying, there's something I would like you to be very careful about. Be careful, make sure that we do not misunderstand this. Why is there this blankness? It's that final paragraph. We must really work to not misunderstand what he is getting at. It's very subtle work. So I'll put a big star on that page.
Edo-san, very briefly, or as briefly as you have time for, can you help me understand what the blank time in a tea ceremony looks like?
Yeah, you know, I found that so interesting that he brought up the tea ceremony. You know, the tea ceremony is really difficult. For me, it's a really difficult ceremony because nothing happens. So much of nothing happens that, you know, if you're impatient at all, you destroy the ceremony. And there is this, you know, drinking the tea where there's nothing except the tea going down, or the tea drinks us down, the experience of the tea drinking us. And there's that kind of blankness in which that moment happens very deeply. And the blankness of examining the cup and just being with the appreciation of the cup itself. Now, like everything, there is the opportunity to show how smart you are by how you admire this cup. And that problem is always there for us, that we can be self-conscious by showing how gorgeous we are, and some little detail on the cup, and aren't we smart with that? So that treacherous moment is there, but there's also the blank moments in a very large tea ceremony when you're just sitting there and all you have are tea ceremony feet going in front of you, back and forth, serving tea as they go along, and nothing is happening. You aren't thinking, you are just in the space of this activity. And I think that is what he may be getting at. Of course, if you are a fine practitioner, your examination of the teapot is truly it. And you are not anything but the enjoyment of that pot, that cup. So, but if these blank moments in a big tea ceremony, sometimes there are 100 people at a tea ceremony, and then you've got maybe 20 women in kimonos, and their feet are in the way they have to walk because the kimono cloth is so wrapped tight around the ankles. So all you are watching these feet just going back and forth, and there is just a being there with it, knowing that all of these people are going to be served, and that all of these people are going to drink that tea, and it's kind of stunning in its hugeness in that sense. So there are different kinds of tea ceremonies, and there is another blank one in a very informal tea ceremony, as you know, we have watched at our own table. When somebody is frothing the tea, you're not doing anything, you're just watching this. And it's that blank moment also that is that Dharma activity happening. I think he's after that.
Hiro-san,
Yes.
is it possibly, I don't know that it is, but do you think it's possibly related to the eternal moment?
Of course.
Where where you've sort of stepped out of time, where things change, but they don't really, they succeed one another, but they don't really change. It's like a kaleidoscope without the impression is that an image changes, but time hasn't passed. Is he speaking about that?
Very good. Yeah, that's very good. Very interesting. Yeah.
I mean, I can think, for example, in the Hebrew Bible, where Moses sees the burning bush. Well, the bush is burning, but is not consumed. It's as though he stepped out of time.
Yes.
And but I will leave the Bible. Come back to Buddhist.
No, that's fine. I mean, we can enjoy teachings from the Bible too, but that is correct. There is this sensation of things happening, but as you say, I like the kaleidoscope explanation of that, in which just these things changing, and there you are in a timeless way. With the images of these feet going back and forth, or whatever it is. And it isn't that we don't image things. Of course we image things. The question is whether we allow the image to not be encumbered by our idea of what it is. To just allow the image of those feet back and forth in that timeless sense of the tea ceremony is to bring about that eternal timelessness. It is intended to do that, to take us out of our hysteric carrying on and racing down the road and stop at the tea house and stop.
I think I had a similar perception, Jerry, where he's describing a condition or a place of consciousness where there is no time and is beyond perception.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So
I love the kaleidoscope, Jerry, because I have such fond memories of using a kaleidoscope as a kid. And the way the components of whatever it is that you're working with are all the same all the time, right? It's the contents of the kaleidoscope. But through that subtle movement of turning the kaleidoscope, everything is new over and over and over again. And there's similarities each time. You can kind of see, oh, there's that blue showing up again, or that red is now combined with this yellow or whatever. But it's just always novel. So I love that image. Thank you for that.
I do too. It's a good one. Very, very, very nice. Yeah, yeah. All right, should we look at the next page then? The nature of Zen. You know, here we have a big 3 pages here, yet again. And so, so this poem he starts out with, written by a man who found enlightenment through the koan mu. For many years, questioning the mu of Joshu, doubts coming and going, crossing between being and nothingness. A mountain of silver, a wall of iron, forgetting myself. With all my being, one great shout of mu. So then Harada Roshi takes these lines, paragraph by paragraph, and takes a look at them. And he comes to this very first one: questioning means doubting, becoming a great mass of doubt. But questioning, of course, is the essence of practice. We, you know, in essence, to even take up what we earlier talked about, which would be to consider ourselves in light of creating concepts, means that we must question ourselves. We must look into ourselves and question what we are doing. So questioning itself is deeply part of Zen practice. Very unlike the notions of faith in other traditions, in which in some traditions we are told, don't question, stop questioning, take it on faith. And yet we are required to question even our most deeply held, even our faith we must question, to be sure that we are not hiding some kinds of delusion within it. So this questioning then means doubting, becoming a great mass of doubt. And then he says that it's particular kind of doubt, not doubts in the usual sense, rather it means the great mass of doubt has become deeper and deeper. Being and nothingness refers to the dualistic view of understanding and not understanding, is and is not. Now there's a bit to unpack, huh? So doubt in the sense of our usual doubt, I don't believe that man was really there. It's not that kind of doubting, but rather something deeper and deeper in us that asks whether we have reached the bottom, to doubt whether we have reached the bottom of our questioning search. Have we really climbed underneath it to feel that we have gone as profoundly as we could in terms of examining ourselves? The dualistic view of understanding and not understanding. Something is and is not. So if the great mass of doubt has become deeper and deeper, we are in being and nothingness. The dualistic view of understanding and not understanding is and is not. Anybody want to throw some understanding in that? See what we can unpack around this.
I don't know if this is even close, but the thing that occurred for me in that paragraph was that idea of an onion and taking in my own self-examination, peeling away, peeling away, peeling away. And then, you know, you sort of can get that sense of, oh, that's it. Oh, no, I don't know if that really is it. And the doubt that, well, have I really gone? Is that really the stopping point? Or is there more? Is there more? And it's easy to say, oh, I've got it. I found it. That's it. That's the thing. But the moment I think I do that, then that's when you let your pedal off the accelerator. You can start coasting. And I don't know if that's the energy that's really that drives the most productive inquiry.
So that, I mean, that is really good to bring up. And it occurs that, you know, we are in relationship to ourselves as well as in relationship to others in the world. And so we know when we've been in an argument with somebody, or we're talking about something, and we're trying to be deeply honest, and here we've got this person before us, and here we are, and we are trying to express as honestly as we can whatever disturbs us about whatever the situation is. And we know that if we leave that moment, we know what we didn't say. We know when we were not completely honest about something. And that walks with us. And then we wind up coming back on it again in some way in our relationships because we didn't quite pin it down in the point of meeting, however difficult and painful and hard it might be. Did we meet that with the pit bottom absolute reality, honesty that we know is there and brewing in us? So I take it in that way, you know, because my Dharma name means useful, by the way. The Dharma must always be useful. And so whenever we come, not Edo is illuminating way, but my first name, Katsu Yu, means regenerating energy or useful way or useful energy. And so practical energy. So it must always be useful to us, because if it is not, then we ourselves cannot manifest then. So it must be of use in the world, and of use means manifesting. So as you say that, Karen, that strikes me as a way to look at that doubt. Discerning whether we have reached that pit bottom is really important practice. And then, of course, to explain or express it in a way that is skillful so that we don't harm. Anybody else want to say anything about that? I mean, there's a lot to unpack in that. And
I'm thinking about it in terms of becoming doubt.
okay.
Similar to last week's discussion on everyday mind, you know, becoming, everyday activity. Well, in this case, becoming doubt. And so what does that mean to become doubt? I don't know, but what occurred to me is something that there's a Korean Zen teacher, I think, on from Cambridge. And I heard a recorded lecture one time, and she kept on talking about this thing called dono mind. And I thought maybe it's a Korean word, dono mind or something. And then they said, oh, she's saying don't know mind. Her Zen practice is to always have the don't know mind.
Yes.
And so I kind of drew that line to that. Becoming doubt with this always questioning mind, in a mind that, you know, you're always reminding yourself that you don't know.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. I think there are stages of the deep doubt mind also that can be devastating and treacherous for Zen practitioners, for people who are doing koan mu. in which they are, they're just devoid of any color in them. They are so immersed in the great, great doubt. There's that long English poem, I fled him down the days and down the nights. I fled him down the labyrinthian ways of my own mind. This great doubt of everything and refusal in some way to allow the unfolding of that doubt to make any sense to us too can happen to people too and can be treacherous. So don't know mind is a shade of that for certain, and a little softer in its sense of the practice of doubt. So, but for some, doubt, and I've read some experiences of it, and it can be very difficult. So, but that's mostly for people who are deeply involved in koan practice. And so, and the koan is about the ability to, or one's ability to see through that koan such that you have that, your mind just smashes away and it opens wide, and you see the futility of what you had been doing in the first place, and that you weren't going to get the kind of answer that you thought you were going to get, because it's not like that. But I think that in Dogen Zenji's practice, this great doubt is that which nourishes our daily life. It's that which, as you point out, it's don't know mind, is a form of equilibrium, or a form of not accepting delusion and constantly seeing through delusion. So. Okay, so then we come to the third line, a mountain of silver, a wall of iron, forgetting myself. And so we very likely have those moments in which we are in this glorious climbing of the mountain, the silver mountain, and we have the sense of opening and it's wonderful and so forth. And then this wall of iron we meet, in which we cannot pierce our own understanding. We can't even see our own mind. The wall of iron is so great that we are blank, and we can't go there. And so at the same time, when that happens, we forget ourselves in that pressure to be in presence and flow, to draw us in that long circle where we began. So that's not such a bad place, any of those, not so bad, because the forgetting myself is the key piece of the intensity of practice. Forget the self by absorbing ourselves in zazen. That's way down at the bottom of 135. There is no other way to break down this mountain of silver, all this wall of iron. No other way except to immerse ourselves, absorb ourselves totally in zazen. And then the final line, together with all things, he literally talks about vomiting up. I think Heejin Kim talks about that in his book too, about literally vomiting out misunderstanding, vomiting out or expelling the whole body in order to bring up the totality of understanding, or the totality of the experience, to bring about the experience itself. Give away the whole body. But then he says, doesn't matter what kind of practice we are doing. Mu, shigantaza, following the breath, counting breaths, or koan practice, these are all essentially the same. So don't think of it as applying only to mu. This verse applies to all forms of zazen. So it's a sense of accepting where we are in practice, honoring our condition at any given moment on the cushion, and honoring that at that moment, the best that I can do is to breathe and count my breaths. And it's not as though that is a failure of some kind or a falling back, but that is an authentic practice. And at that moment, that is my authentic practice in standing in the Dharma at that Dharmic moment.
It feels to me like this is a verse about that lays out a map for what it means to be greatly diligent in Zazen.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this great dare to like actually say, I am really going to go all the way until the ego just collapses of its own weight. And then this shout just kind of like rises up from your hara.
That's right. So in that moment, by the way, just a moment ago, when Bill had this silence while we waited for him to allow the Dharma to come out of his mouth, did you have a good blank? So that's where we are together when we listen closely to one another, because in that moment, a pure Dharma expression is coming forth if we wait for it. So that blank, what does he call it? Blank mind, blank space, blank what? Blank something. Blank time. That is blank time. And that is extremely important. So that just happened, and I just wanted to point that out. So, so yes, whatever you said. The Dharma just washes over us. That's what it does. So, but that is, as you say, it is the blueprint for making the effort so thoroughly to be Zazen. It is the map for that. So indeed, so all forms of Zazen are there in that. So, and he reminds us again that we don't get to Zazen by thinking Zazen. We can't, we just simply have to let notions go and simply be one with our own Zazen. I mean, we say it over and over, and we will say it millions of times in as many different ways as possible until we are convinced that maybe we get there, we get that experience. Then I'd like this very next paragraph in the bottom of 136. This is another really, I think, important moment. Be the cause. Be the cause of awakening. Since cause and result are one, you won't need to search for the result. We don't need to search for the result of awakening if we are the cause of awakening. I mean, is that fantastic? I mean, we are that. The Buddha's awakening, our awakening is not expressed except that we have taken form. Form is emptiness. And we are the cause of the expression of Buddha. So just be that cause. We don't have to worry about the result. It already is. The result is already manifested because we have taken form. So not within our imaginings or expectations of the result. That's a seeking mind. I'd like you only to completely, totally, and purely make the effort to be the cause. Please, in your work this week, consider that practice of the cause, or to be the cause. I mean, essentially, that's all there is. It seems so simple, and yet it is. And it is an extraordinarily important teaching that he gives in that tiny sentence. Make the effort to be the cause.
Ada?
Yes.
I find the word completely, at least twice on this page, and if I may, going back to the third paragraph, second sentence, to be completely a samadhi of zazen.
Yes.
I find those 6 words so beautiful, so compelling, and just those 6 words to me summarize the whole book in a way, in terms of be completely a samadhi of zazen, total absorption in the activity of zazen, so that our sense of self and the activity just dissolve.
Correct. That's
And
right.
it's beautiful.
Yes, it is. Yes. And I mean, one of the difficult parts about that, of course, is the idea of what we think samadhi is, so that we carry, here we can be in treacherous territory also if we carry a concept of samadhi, so that we can think that we are there, and yet we are sitting in a notion, a concept of it. So that same caution as he gave us earlier on in the caution of making a concept around emptiness, we must not make a concept around samadhi. It's really, really important also. There's, we can get really trapped in that idea of samadhi, and it can become all encompassing in a person, and then they start to carry that false persona around, as it were. So that's all. Just be cautious of that.
Yeah.
But Wanshi Shogaku, one of my favorite lines in Wanshi Shogaku, he says, enter samadhi like the Dharma wind that breezes throughout the entire world. So just be in what samadhi is manifesting at any particular moment, and not create it in a concept. That's all.
Now, recurring teaching for me in this chapter is to not attach much significance to our thoughts.
Yeah.
Because if we do, then going back a few pages to what we were discussing last week, it creates waves. Our preconceived notions create waves.
Right, right. I mean, you know, they're great bumper stickers. Don't believe everything you think.
Right.
So, and often we do. And so, yeah.
It is so this passage about the cause and the result.
Yes.
Is the quintessential Dogen teaching, isn't it, with practice of enlightenment?
Yes. That's right. We are doing, I shouldn't even say doing, we are enlightenment as in the nature of practice. That's what, you know, that's what this is. This is the nature of Zen, is to be in that realization. But we do Dogen. We do Dogen Zenji. We don't study him. So we do Dogen by climbing onto the cushion, by sitting wholeheartedly in practice and going forth in our lives, carrying that with us without having to worry about the result. If we know that we are the cause of awakening, we're liberated. We are free to just go about life and carry it joyfully. So the Dharma, and then on the next page, 137, Every person is amply endowed with the Dharma, but without practice, it will not be manifested. Without enlightenment, it will not be attained. So he is talking here that each person, we have deep Zazen experience as well as those who never have done Zazen. Each person is fully and amply endowed with the Dharma. So that is something we must recognize, that we don't have to look for it someplace else. We have to keep practicing with it under our own 2 feet. So. And he is confident, as always, that if we continue, as he says, the Buddha, I'm here somewhere, the Buddha also says, if you keep at it, it will happen. You will know in a Dharma way that you got there, that you did it. You are able to rest on the confidence of your experience. It is your experience that you must point to that is a kind of, I don't want to say proof, so I want to say a demonstration of your knowing that you fulfilled that deepest possible uncovering that you could possibly go to. And the Japanese refer to it as breaking your bones. So that's it. And I have referred to it as, are you willing to die on the cushion? And that's to break your bones. You know, some people have certainly harmed their bodies in pursuit of this, you know, by wrecking their knees, breaking the bones of their knees, by sitting so long in Zazen that they can't walk. And we don't advocate for such a thing. But we do advocate for how far can you, how far, what is your personal capacity for earnestness or wholeheartedness? What is your capacity for that? We should know that about ourselves. I practiced, well, maybe I won't go into that, never mind. So. I practiced fencing years ago. And you have to be willing to die if you are a fencer. And you have to be willing to, you know, render your sword into another person's chest. Well, of course, you're wearing all protective gear and you don't really kill one another. But if you aren't willing to demonstrate yourself to that point, you can't do the sport. You have to have the instinct for the total capacity in order to do that. So we should know about ourselves. What is your capacity for that? What are you willing to do? Where's your place? Where's your point? So.
Edo-san, a thought came up while we were talking about this, and I realized how much I'm missing practicing with the Sangha, that I find it hard to locate the willingness to go to the mat, you know, all it takes is everything. You know, I know that dwells in me, but somehow being separate from the Sangha, I don't know if other folks are experiencing this. I think it's harder.
It is. No doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. And I think I am going to stand on the notion that it's been good for you to know that and to experience that the Sangha is, of course, there. We are all there. You're not absent from the Sangha, but you don't experience them in your midst, or the energy of the Sangha in pulling our Zazen together in the Zendo. But the Sangha is there. But really, really important that you realize that what's missing, what you feel is missing. That is great. That is great. I will give these 3 months away and I will be very happy with them. So that's a very good experience to know that one loves the Sangha. So. All right, we are coming down to our time together, so I just want to finish off in this paragraph. So Suzuki Roshi, excuse me, Harada Roshi, on the bottom paragraph of 137, he writes, fundamentally, it is because of attachment to the ego self that you have forgotten that you have your essence in your pocket. That's a nice way to say that. Delusion is the condition of desperately looking for it. Essentially, the Dharma is yours. So if you practice correctly and look for it, surely you can get hold of it. Sit single-mindedly, penetrate Zazen. That is so great. I just love that little paragraph there.
It reminds me of a pep talk a coach gives before you go out on the field.
Well, that's it, because when we go to repentance next week, you need that pep talk. Yeah.
Well, what's the difference between desperately looking for it and correctly looking for it?
You figure that out, my friend. Yeah.
I think that there's some relation to the Fukan Zazengi, and I want to mention that. In the Fukan Zazengi, Dogen says, even if you have attained the way, clarified the mind, and gained the power to touch the heavens, you are still only wandering about the frontiers of enlightenment. In fact, you have almost lost the way of total liberation. And I think of that when he's speaking and says, since cause and effect are one, so you won't need to search for the result. The result is already manifested. Please don't practice Zazen within your imaginings or expectations of the result.
Right.
So even if you have considerable experience and have some sense of what enlightenment, or had some experience of enlightenment, if that becomes an idea that you search to recreate, then you're seeking in the way that he's speaking about, and you're and you've made a very serious mistake that you may be lost in for many years.
I mean, there is nothing more difficult than to have an awakening experience, because you are immediately caught in the responsibility of it and the joy and the longing for it to come again. But I also want to suggest that the awakening experience is the most natural state. It is not an extraordinary thing that is going to take us flying into the sky. It is the correct and natural state. And we, in delusion, are living outside of what is a natural way to live. So to, in that final paragraph, then to say, practice correctly and just look for it. Delusion is the condition of desperately looking for something. Your essence is in your pocket. Just open your pocket. Empty the contents. Now, maybe that's what's important, is to empty the contents. So that we discover that there's nothing there.
I think for many of us, well, just speaking for myself, desperately looking typically is with my intellectual mind. And I reflect back on what you said earlier, Ado. We do Dogen, we don't study him. And Jerry, you mentioned the Fugon Zenzengi. I think it's there that Dogen says something like, you should cease from practice based on intellectual understanding in the pursuit of letters and words.
Take the backward step.
Yes. Don't overthink it. Empty the pockets.
Oh, what a great Sangha we have. A great discussion tonight. Thank you so much for it. Just beautiful minds, beautiful wisdom coming forth. So let's just chant. Beings are numberless, I vow to save them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless, I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassed, I vow to become it. Let's end with that tonight because it was immediately appropriate. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
See ya.
Thank you, everyone. Good to see you.
Wish you
Good to
wish
see
you
you.
good sitting on Saturday without rain.
Everybody pray for sunshine on Saturday.
Hope so, everybody. Everybody. Clear the clouds. I'm looking forward.